Welcome back to the Treehouse. We are the Fallen Fruit. I'm Catherine Urban.
Stephanie Ginese.
Lynette Ramos.
And we have our very first special guest today. We're here with Miranda Scott, owner of Coven. And we're excited to get to know Miranda today. Hi, Miranda.
Hi. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited.
Yeah, we're so excited to have you. Not only are you our first guest on the Fallen Fruit, but we are super fangirls of you and Coven.
Thank you so much. I'm big fans of you guys too. I considered each of you your first guests. That's like when I listened. I was a big fan.
Aww,
yeah.
Thanks. Yeah. Okay, so we got some questions for you.
Okay.
Yeah. I guess first, just introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about you and Coven and how Coven came to be and how you came to be.
Sure. Okay, well, my name's Miranda Scott. I own Coven, which is located in Lakewood, Ohio. It has been open for a little over a year now. Coven
Congratulations.
Thank you so much. Coven was born during cancer season, so she's a cancer baby. But yeah, so I reside in Cleveland. I have lived in Cleveland, Ohio the last 5 years. I'm originally from Elyria, which is a little bit of a suburb west, I think, of Cleveland, 30 minutes west. But yeah, I've enjoyed living in Cleveland the last 5 years. I live with my partner named Kate, and I have a 7-year-old daughter named Charlie and 2 cats. And I live in an all-black house. I call it my little witch house. And then, yeah, my partner, my daughter, and both my cats are Libras. I just thought that they're all Libras.
Oh, my God.
So I just thought that was relevant, too.
That is very relevant.
You're surrounded by Libras.
I am. It's once I, had Charlie, they just all, came to me. I just attracted all the Libras.
I imagine that your house has a lot of style then, because, Libras are very stylish, but you're very stylish, because you have Leo. You're a Leo rising, right?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, Leos have an eye for the glam.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've always loved fashion and shopping, but then I've always, I don't know what it is in me that makes me resist that and not embrace that about myself, because my mom used to always be like, you have a shopping problem. And then she got me those little, stick figures for the back window of my car, and she got me with, shopping bags, those little stick figures.
Okay, Mom, that's shade.
And I was like, why did you get me with the shopping bags? And she's like, because that's all you do is shop. And I'm just like, I don't know why. I just never want to embrace that about myself. But yeah, I really like to buy things for my house. I like to feel cozy in my home. I like to decorate. I like to decorate myself with tattoos and piercings and clothes. I've always been like that. So, and then I learned that I have a Leo rising. So that makes a lot of sense.
It fits the bill. Yeah. And I feel like, as someone who loves to shop, now you've created a shop where that's all we want to do.
Yeah.
Well, and then I get to shop for Coven, which I enjoy. I enjoy all the intention that goes behind that. So yeah, just more about Coven is I definitely 90% of the store are all from small artists. So it's not like I'm ordering off of a bulk website. I'm always very hesitant of that. I just had someone come in the other day that's here's this catalog, and they're just an online supplier, and that just doesn't fit right with me. Maybe I might sell some taper candles that's from a bulk supplier, but when it comes to a tarot deck, even my books, a lot of times I'm getting those directly from the authors and things like that. So I try to put as much intention, and yeah, it's fun for me. I get to be creative, and then I get to shop, but then I get to sell those things and
make the money
make
back.
A little bit of money back. So, but I'm constantly shopping, so it makes me happy to do that with intention.
You're living the dream.
I
worked out for you.
It did. It really did.
So some of our listeners probably don't know about Coven. So can you tell us a little bit about what you have at the shop and kind of what the vision of the shop entails?
Yeah, so I definitely wanted Coven to be a healing space for me, it was a path that offered a lot of like healing and comfort in some of my like darkest times. And like as I started to follow that path more and more, I was like, yeah, I definitely want to open up a space that's safe and comfortable, and allots for these tools for people to use on this path and on the journey. But yeah, I sell it's basically a modern witchcraft store is what I call it. But then we offer, classes and events and things like that kind of have more like a lot of intention behind them and more purpose. But yeah, so you'll find candles, books, crystals, tarot decks, oracle decks, art, things like that. And yeah, it brings me a lot of joy. I love it. And but yeah, that's how I got started with like, I have a little bit of like a sales background and an entrepreneurial background. I knew I always wanted to own a shop, but I don't think I ever saw Coven coming. It just kind of like found me, I guess.
So beautiful.
Yeah.
I'm interested to know about the manifestation process, because you've been open for about a year, and most retailers need a lot of time usually before they see the return and before they see this flow. And I feel like you already have it.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about how you created it or how it aligned with you.
Sure. I mean, I guess I'll go back to the beginning of like, I always knew that I was going to own my own business. So like I grew up, my dad was an entrepreneur. My mom always helped my dad. They basically ran the business that he did together. So I never saw my parents like wake up and like have to get to work at a certain time or clock in anywhere. But I also saw my parents work really hard when no one was pushing them to do that. So my parents were up early every single morning, like just hustling and like doing their thing. And that always inspired me. And I never wanted to ever really work for anyone else. And I just knew that I was going to own my own business. So I didn't graduate high school. I didn't go to college. And that is just what I banked on like my whole life. So I always have worked in retail, and I'm one of those like weirdos that just enjoyed it. Like everyone would complain about working in retail, and I'm like, I don't know, I just like love it. Like I love meeting new people. I love the art of like selling things and doing it like my own way. And yeah, so it eventually, I was just like, I know I'm gonna own my own shop, but I don't know what that looks like. And my parents passed away 4.5 years ago. And I always share this part of my story because I don't want to make it seem like my business just came out of thin air. And like, it's like I got a little bit of like an inheritance when my parents passed away. And I started like traveling. Obviously, I was really stricken with grief, and I started traveling. I started doing all of these things that I thought were going to make me feel better, and in a way that they did, but it didn't matter how many yoga retreats I went on or how many mountains I climbed or whatever. I was like, okay, I'm just sad. And then eventually I was like, well, I got to get back to like real life. But I think when you have suffered like a tragedy, like you don't just go back to real life. It feels different at that point. It's just like, it's impossible. So I was like, I think that instead of like wasting this money or paying my bills or whatever, I'm just going to open a business. And I took the first stab at my business through a vintage clothing store. And I'm very open with sharing my journey of that. It wasn't a failure per se. It really wasn't for me. Like, it didn't spark any joy for me. It just seemed really shallow. Once again, I always liked clothes, but I was like, it's just not for me. It's not working. Like, something wasn't connecting. And all the while I was on this path, because right before my mom passed away, I bought us a trip to Salem, Massachusetts. And she was right on the verge of like finding her authentic self and her identity, and she was always afraid to travel, and she never wanted to go anywhere. So she was like, you know, this is it. Like, this is going to be my summer. Like, I'm going to live my life. And so in April, like 5 days before she passed away, I like booked this trip to Salem and like gave it to her for her birthday. Wow. And 5 days later, she passed away. Wow. So that trip was booked for October. And so all of this was kind of happening like simultaneously. I was thinking about owning a business, but, you know, I was also like on this path, and I forgot about the Salem witch trials until I like got to Salem, and then I was going for like the Halloween festivities. I wasn't going to like shop at witchcraft stores. It wasn't until I got there that I was just like, oh, like, what is this? And and I just like clicked. It was one of those dorky things, like I said, where it was like it found me when I needed it the most, and I just really connected with that. And I looked back on everything in my life, and I'd always been searching for something spiritual. It just wasn't until then that it really like clicked for me. So I, you know, was simultaneously kind of running my vintage clothing store alongside of like finding healing on this path. And that's when all of a sudden, I think I learned through being an entrepreneur that one thing that you can do as an entrepreneur to be a good one is admit to yourself when something isn't working. I think so many people like get caught up in like saving face, and they don't want to fail. So they are like, here, like, I'm just going to keep dumping money, or I'm going to take equity out of my home and dump it more into my business. It's like, okay, but if it's not working, it's just not working. And you have to admit that to yourself. And one of your biggest compasses with that is that it should be, although it's hard, it should spark some sort of joy or be like fun for you. Right. Because owning your own small business for me has been a big creative outlet. It's not just all about the money that you make. Mm-hmm. So that was one of my biggest compasses with that. And I was like, this has to end. And then I was like, I don't know what I want to do after this. I know I don't want to go back to working at like the mall. I don't want to do that, but I don't know how this is going to play out for me. And yeah, I have a really weird like story about how Coven like came to be and how I manifested it, because I kept going to all these shops in Salem and I loved it, but I swear I never thought about like owning a witchcraft store. And I used to go to a witchcraft store called Goddess Blessed over on Madison that had been open for like 20 years. So I was just like, Cleveland doesn't need a witchcraft store. I never thought about it. And then Charlie, my now 7-year-old daughter, she like got sick and she had like the flu for like a week. And so I already like fucking hated my job anyway, and I was like, it's fine, like I'm just gonna stay home for the week and just like camp out with her. And Netflix suggested this show called The Good Witch, which is just like a weird Hallmark series that I would like normally never watch. And I started watching it, and it just like clicked for me. I was like, oh my God, I want this woman's life. Like, it's so fucking weird. It's like out of a Hallmark show, but like this is the life I want. And basically she's a witch and she owns a shop in this like small little quaint town, and she just like helps people in her community through magic. And I was like, yeah, that could be me. And I decided to just start like watching it every single night when I fall asleep, because I'm a big believer in like what I think about with a lot of intention behind it is like what I get. And it was so weird. Like literally a week after I started watching this show, like I followed Goddess Bless on Facebook, and she announced that she was retiring. And she was closing the store. Oh my God. Yeah, it was weird. And wow. And I was like, because I used to go in there like every week to collect supplies, and like I would talk to her, and there was no like inkling that she would be closing like anytime soon. So it was just odd. And I remember saying that, like, I was like, I don't know how this is going to happen for me or when it's going to happen for me, but I just know it's going to happen. Like, it's just a hunch. Like, I just feel it. And, but really, whenever I put a lot of intention behind something and I manifest, like, I have to be careful because it happens really fast for me. And if I was left to my own devices and my thoughts and the way that my thoughts were playing out, I probably would have waited a lot longer to open Coven and like tried to really plan this time. But it was like the universe just wanted me to do it, because once she announced that she was closing, I was like, oh my God, maybe I could really actually do this. but I was like stuck in a lease with my vintage clothing store. I had like signed a 3-year lease. I think I had only been open for like 2 years. And then, I was like, I don't know. I have a really strict, like Greek Orthodox, like Trump supporting, like landlord that I was like, he'll never let me open a witchcraft store. As a matter of fact, when I opened my vintage clothing store, I was wearing like a pentagram necklace, and I was asking him about like what workshops I could have. And he was like, you can have workshops. It's your shop. He's like, but just no like tarot or like witchy stuff.
Whoa.
Which is it?
Yeah.
Yeah, and that was like a long time ago, like when I opened my vintage clothing store, and I was like, why would he say that to me? Like, I have no idea. And it's like, but even like then, it's like looking back, it's like the universe like knew that I was gonna have, I don't know, something like that. And but yeah, so I was like, I don't know how I'm gonna get out of my lease or how I'm gonna present this to him. And then that's when a restaurant next to me came over and was like, we want to expand and we can only go your way.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, so I was just like, okay, like I was like, I have to move.
Guess I gotta go.
I gotta go, and I'm out of my lease now, so I guess I'm free to like follow this path if that's what's calling to me. And
Wow.
so I was like, yeah. So I know it's so weird, but that's
Wow.
really what happened. And I was like, okay, so I'm gonna pack up my stuff and start over. And then I actually started looking all around Cleveland. I really wasn't necessarily set on Lakewood per se, but my landlord had a spot, which is the spot that I'm in now. And it's actually incredible because it was vacant for like a year. And it's actually a really great space. Mm-hmm. And I'm really surprised that it was vacant, but it was. And he was like, you can move in here. It was like less than half of like what I was paying to be on like the main street. And I moved in there and it started. I only used the front half of the store at first because, you know, I knew that Coven was going to be successful. It was like the first time that I had like seen, it was weird because like when I look back on things in my life, I'm like, obviously it was a stepping stone, but like even with my vintage clothing business, like I couldn't see it through. Like, I couldn't see it, and I knew that, but I did it anyway because I'm more of, like, a doer, and I don't really think very much about stuff, especially after certain experiences in my life. I'm like, okay, like, I'm just doing this, and I'm not thinking about it at all, but I couldn't see my vintage clothing store through. I knew that it wasn't going to be my end game forever. I knew that when I first started it, but Coven's, like, something that I can see all the way through, and I know that is already very successful. And yeah, because I've already got to expand, I already have like so many repeat customers, but I don't know how much of that boils down to like manifestation or just genuine like authenticity. And I definitely have learned through my years of being in sales and interested in entrepreneurship that for me that is just something that like rings true for me, is like the more authentic and genuine you are, and when you're actually doing something that is like your path and like your legend, that it can only be successful. And like that is really what I think works for me. And anytime I bring like new people on board, like at Coven, like it's the total opposite. Like I throw out like everything that I've ever learned in every sales job that I've ever had. And the first thing I tell them is like, you're not a salesperson. Like we're not selling anybody anything. Like I don't want you trying to upsell anybody or being like, look at this new product or we're having this deal over here. Like it's just not how it works. Like I do utilize tools like Instagram and all of that, which is once again a creative outlet for me, but I'm not really worried about people. Like I just know that the right people come in every single day that are like meant to be there, whether they realize it or not. And for me, that is like the magic and the intention behind it and like why it works. And as long as I stay grounded and truthful and genuine and authentic, that it will always just take care of itself, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
I know.
Yeah.
The power of manifestation. All you need is Netflix.
A Hallmark series, a good old Hallmark series, some hot cocoa.
I'm going to watch Woman on Top every night before bed.
Yeah, right? I mean, it's really fucking weird. I kind of hate that the universe gave me that portion of the story. Like, what the fuck? But that's just the truth, and I'm here to tell the truth. So,
Authenticity.
I love it. Thanks for that exclusive story.
yes.
You heard it here first. Maybe not, but.
I think that's been the first time I've ever told it, like, all the way through like that. And
nice.
Especially, like, you know, leaving it out in the world for someone to go back and listen to. Like, yep, that's what it is. That's all it takes, kids.
Yep.
Just
The Good Witch.
Yeah.
I want to watch it now.
But, so you talk about the power of manifestation and like your practice, and from being at the shop with you, I have seen you engage in very like intentional and special candle magic. So I know that people, some know about it if they've been in the shop, but maybe not as like extensively as you actually like do it in practice.
Sure, yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so people can come in and get spell candles done for whatever intention. Most people want to share with me like what their intention is. I really haven't come across anyone that's like, I don't want to tell you. They usually like want my assistance, and so they're usually pretty like vulnerable and open about what they're trying to manifest. The cutest thing about my job is that I meet so many people, and they're all trying to manifest something, but it's so cute because like really humans are all after the same thing, and it's just very beautiful and like adorable in its own way. And it's like we all just want to experience joy and live a happy, healthy life and connect. And like it's and like, you know, so people will come in and like want that, and you know, we sit down and we make candles together. And I have candles that like slide out of the jar, so we can sit down and like pick different like symbols and sigils, or even make some of their own. And then they take their time to like carve it. And yeah, I mean, I do a whole process. Like I cleanse everything before they do it. I like cleanse their candles for them. I like tell them that if they so choose to, they can call in any like gods or goddesses or their ancestors or people that they might work with to do magic. And like it's a whole little setup, and I love it. And yeah, they carve it, and then we'll like burn some things and put that in the bottom of the candle, and then I will mix up different like oils and herbs and things like that for them to use to anoint their candle. And then I usually finish the top for them, and I'm always putting intention into it for them. Because I legit, when someone comes and gets a spell candle from me, I'm just like, yeah, like it works. And I have no doubt about it. So at the very least, even if they're kind of skeptical, like I'm just there like putting all the intention into it, because for me, candle magic works like 100% of the time. Mm-hmm. And I just know that it's going to work for them. And I just, you know, help them walk through that process. And then I finish off the top by either pulling like maybe some flowers that I have in the shop that, you know, I purchased for the shop, or like different things that I have sitting on the counter that I've been using that day. Or, one of my favorite things to do is like when friends come in and like carve beside each other, I like to put a little bit of like each other's carving shavings like on each other's, because they did it together. And like and for me it like carries that energy of each other's intention. And I think when you have really good friends in your life that's willing to like come to a witchcraft store and carve candles with you, like they're like rooting for you, you know. Mm-hmm. So it's like a little piece of them like rooting for you and your spell candle, and it's so sweet. So yeah, that's a little bit about that process.
Yeah. And you were saying that you maybe have your own signature line coming out.
Yeah. So I mean, this is something that I don't talk to a lot about people. My first line I have coming out are anointing oils for candles. So they're different, like they're elemental oils for candles. And so they're something that like I've continued to make like in the shop and like keep behind the counter. And a few people have like, when I anoint the candles with the oil, they're like, why don't you like sell this? And I'm like, yeah, like I should, you know, do that and like sell them. So I'll be coming out with that. And then, yeah, I have a whole like sex magic line that I've like designed, that is very, fluid, and it's queer, and like it's for everyone. It's like, it's just a really cool like sex magic line that I'm like in love with, but I just can't seem to like get the time to actually create the products, because that's just a whole nother thing. So I hope to have that coming out very, very soon.
And as you might have guessed, Miranda is a Scorpio.
Yes.
Yes, that Scorpio-Leo rising combo, I'm a big fan of.
Yeah, and then I have my moon in Cancer, which I learned from Catherine, and like I think that helps like balance that spiciness out a little bit.
Because you care. You like deeply care.
I do.
Yeah.
Too much.
About people. But that's that mothering too. Like you were meant to be a mom, and
yeah. For sure. Yeah. So that like balances it out and helps me not be like so self-absorbed and magnificent and all that. It's good stuff.
Yeah, the Cancer moon, it also knows about the self-care. So you're able to kind of provide people those tools to be both empowered and restorative. And yeah, I'm really excited for what you've got coming out in the future. I want to know more about the sex magic line.
I'm here for that. If you need any like guinea pigs,
Yeah.
Sex magic also works 100% of the time.
Yeah. More than happy to try it out.
and so very like, it's a line too that's like, you also don't need a partner to do sex magic.
Right.
Like it's very inclusive to that as well. So it's like you can do sex magic with just yourself. Like you don't.
That's my favorite kind of sex magic.
Right?
Yes.
It's like, move out of my way. I got enough energy.
Right? Yeah. I mean, that's totally how I got my partner. Just saying, like I totally like manifested her through ritual and all of that stuff, and on the new moon, and just doing a little sex magic. Just
it's some of the most powerful energy of the universe. Just saying.
That's funny because like Kate, it does like sex therapy is like her avenue, right?
Right.
So that's also
it's hilarious.
Yeah.
We love Kate, by the way.
Thank you.
Yeah, shout out Kate.
Shout out to Kate.
Which she'll be listening. She like loves your podcast. It's so cute.
You know, as a side note, I would love to see you host some workshops at Coven. You have other people hosting, which I think is great, but I think you have some information that would be super useful for people.
I know.
Agreed.
You're calling me out.
I am calling you out. I'm sorry.
No, it's true. And I literally, like, just this month alone, like, I have been manifesting, like, I'm open to change. Like, I feel like so many of my life experiences just puts me in a position to, like, share more. And I don't know what that is. Like literally in the month of October, I had someone who wanted me to teach a class on candle magic, and I had someone who wanted me to teach a class on intuition, and like I canceled both of them. Like I was like,
no, I didn't think the story was going that way.
Yeah, like
and you're like, I said fuck you to both of them.
I said fuck you, and it was so horrible because the one woman was like, oh, it's okay, you can never disappoint me, you know, but we already paid the photographer. And I'm like, fuck, like why do I do this? Like, and also I'm not like an academic, and like I kind of joke all the time that I have ADD, but I'm not joking. Like I'm not making fun of it. Like I really do think that I have ADD. And like whenever someone like sits me down and is like, you need to structure something, or you need to like do homework about something, I'm just like, I can't do it, man. I just can't do it. Like I just struggle with that. So like to structure a class, and then I tell myself like, okay, well the class on intuition, like I got this, I'm still gonna structure it, and then I'll teach it like when I'm ready. but I haven't started working on it yet.
Okay, so I'm going to say this one last thing. No, I think you have enough magic, whether you're doing it at your place or another place, you can say, hey, yes, I'm awesome at what I do, but this is my process.
Yeah.
So I'm going to just, hey, tell me what time to show up, and I'll be there, and I'm going to
wing it
at your house.
Right. So
Yeah.
I think you can do it on your terms.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. That's something I struggle with. I struggle with like bringing value.
Oh,
And like that's what I struggle with, and like and in all honesty, like even though like I said like I see Coven through, and I do, I was just telling someone in the shop the other day, they were asking me about like starting a small business and all that, and I'm just like, sometimes like I won't know things, I'll know them intuitively, and then when I hear myself say it, I'm like, oh, because like I was like, yeah, like a lot of people who own businesses or do really cool things, like they want it to seem like seamless and effortless, and I get that. And like there's this book called like the 48 Laws of Power or whatever, and it's all about being successful and getting like building your way up to the top, and that's one of the laws, is like make everything you do seem effortless. And it's like I get that, but I don't like that, because for me like Coven is and isn't my end game. So like I don't care to like let people see the flaws and like how I do things and how I'm actually quite unorganized and I like fuck shit up all the time, because it's actually not my end game. If I were to say what my end game really is, I would love to help other people build their dreams. Like that's my magic. Like, but I'm just like, okay, if I'm gonna help other people build their dreams, then I'm gonna build mine. But that doesn't mean that it's like effortless. And like, and I agree with you, like most of the stuff that I do is just purely intuitive. Like there are things that I've experienced inside of my body, like in my chakras, like in my soul. Like I've experienced these things. I know that magic exists. I totally believe in all of that, but it's like to bring that value and like be able to really like explain that to someone, like
you're already doing it, because just in your explanation of like the candle magic and the sex magic, we're all like interested. So I just want to mirror back to you that you're already doing it.
Oh, thank you.
I'm done.
I appreciate that. I so appreciate that.
No, it's real talk.
And like, and I would love to like get into, because I haven't got a chance to tell you about our hypno session. Yeah. Like I've told a couple people about our hypno session, and they've like started crying, and I'm like, why are you crying?
Whoa,
like,
I
but
like
know. It's like literally like my hypno session with you is like already moving other people, which is like
whoa,
so adorable, and I love it. And but yeah, it's one of those things, like even with my hypno session with you, it's like I have experienced consciousness observing itself. Like I've experienced out of body experiences where I'm the watcher of my life, because it's like that's what we are. Like we're a lot of things, but like the one thing that's been there like all along is like the watcher of your life. And just like I finished reading The Alchemist when I was on vacation in Florida, and I haven't finished a book in a really long time, and that book is like fictional obviously, but like very philosophical, and like it's like something that even when I read that book, I'm like, God damn, like I've literally experienced this journey. Like I could feel that like in my body. And like one of the things with like The Alchemist is like we all have access to the soul of the world, but there's only one way that we could have access to it. Dun, dun, dun. Is that we're God, you know, like God's inside of us. And that's the only way that we could understand the soul of the world. Like, so that's the watcher. And like when we did hypnosis, it's like I could barely even talk like afterward, because it took so long for me to process it. And I believe in like quantum physics. So like I understand that there are things happening all around me. Like I've seen it, like my past, my present, my future, like happening all at one time. But like it's easy when you're back in your body and you're just living in this realm, you forget those things. And like when you took me back to like my childhood self, like I'll just explain it for you guys. Like I went back to my childhood self, and a lot of times my childhood self is like I learned through hypnosis, my little childhood self is like in this little shack that I used to live in, like in Illyria. And I like walk up to the house and I'm dressed in all black and holding a red balloon. Still don't know what that's about, but I don't know. But, and I go into my childhood home and like my childhood self is like happy and she's smiling and like she just got done painting a picture and like the picture is colorful and like, you know, she seems happy. But then my dad walked in and at the time, like that was a really rough time in my dad's life. So like his energy that's there still was very, very dark. And when my dad walked into the room, you know, Lynette asked me like how my childhood like self felt, like what did my inner child say, and I just like bust out into this cry that is like from the pit of my stomach, and I'm like, she's saying that he hates her, and I'm like, and then I was able to tell my childhood self like, he doesn't hate you, like he loves you, he's just sick. Like my dad was very mentally ill, but like I know that, but like my childhood self didn't know that. Right. And it's like, so like my little childhood self is just off in the quantum world somewhere, like all by herself. And like, she still believes that. And so, and I see that a lot in people, like people will grow up and become adults and they'll be like, I know these things. And it's like, yes, we do know these things, but like, does your inner child know them? And like, does that teenage version of yourself know that? And it was really cool to have my watcher be able to go back and tell, because my watcher was there all along, and my watcher was able to go back and be like, I guess that was my watcher with the red balloon. Yeah. Wow. It's like, you know, and like I was able to tell myself that, and that's really fucking dope. And yeah, now I also am a huge fan, and I always was, but now I'm always also telling people like, you need to hit up Lynette. Go on this journey.
Listen, it's real. Like I need to book another session.
Yeah. Oh yeah, like 100%. Like I would drain my bank account. And mental health like that is like I've learned that as well. Like I don't, as maybe that's my Cancer moon with my self-care, is I definitely don't skimp on my self-care, i.e. like my mental health and the health of my soul, you know, because it's like, if I don't have that, then I don't have anything. So I have to have that.
Do you think a certain event helped you learn that, or was that just something you came to realizing through maybe motherhood or being your own boss, or
like mental health, like how important
that
it is?
Being something that
for sure. I mean, my parents passing away ultimately was like a big turning point in my life. I think there have been other times in my life where like I look back and I'm like, oh, okay, like I was always searching for something. Like my parents, I have a weird journey with like spirituality, because my parents weren't like religious, but they would always talk about God and Jesus, and like they believed in it, but there was no like structure behind it. Like the most I remember is like my dad like coming home and like cheating on my mom, and then having to lay his hand on a Bible and be like, I swear to God on my daughter's life, like I didn't do that, or I did, but I'll never do it again. So like I knew this like book was like sacred, but like I didn't really know the structure behind it or like where it came from. So I never really like clicked with religion. And then I used to go over to my dad's mom's house, who's passed away now, and like my dad and her were born in like the backwood of Kentucky, like dirt floors, like not a whole lot of like exposure in their lives. And so she was very into like, I don't know what the religion was called, but it's like the one where they go to church and they like scream and like talk in tongues and like lose themselves. And she was really into like Ernest Angley every morning, if you remember that guy who used to like save people and they would like convulse and like fall on the floor like that. And so I was just like, I just grew up thinking that like spirituality, I didn't even know it was called spirituality, but like religion was like weird. And my grandma would talk about like the end of the world and how Satan was going to come back, and like if I didn't say I believed in God, he was going to like carve 666 in my forehead and then like cut my head off. Like that's legit what I had. And I would get belly aches. I like developed a fear of like whatever God was or whatever. Like I would literally keep myself up at night, like making myself sick. among a lot of other things that were going on in my life that I was worried about. And that was one of the things. And she kept saying like year 2000. And I was like, oh my God, I'm going to be like 13. Like I'm never going to get the chance to be gay or anything. Like I'm just going to like die when I'm 13 and like, that's it. And like, I just was fearful of it. And then when I was 19 years old, I found the Catholic Church through a woman who my ex-boyfriend worked with. And she was like lonely and wanted someone to go to church with her. And I was just like, well, hell, like, I guess I'll do it. And I actually really found for the first time some sort of like peace in like spirituality and all of that. But like, it still, you know, I just realized it had a lot of conflicting things. I've always been a very like liberal thinker, like very open-minded, and there were just still things that like didn't click for me. And then like pretty much losing my when I move up into my life of like, after I quit going to the Catholic Church, it's like, I just felt once again kind of like an atheist. I didn't really know it was real. I didn't know what to grasp onto, and I really wasn't living my life. I was kind of just on autopilot, like go to work, come home. I very much dumped so much of my energy into like my mom and dad. Like if I didn't, it was like survival mode for me, but not what people would think. It was just a lot of energy being put into it. Cause like if my dad wasn't happy, like I had hell to pay and my mom had hell to pay. So if I could keep him even keeled, that was great. If I didn't keep my mom even keeled, she was depressed and suicidal and like crying all the time. And so I just wanted to like make my parents happy. And eventually like that, with the lack of like spirituality in my life, with the lack of like taking care of my mental health, like going to therapy was very frowned upon in my family. And that wasn't just my immediate, that was like my whole family on both sides. Like it was considered like if you went to therapy, like you were crazy. I had nothing to really grasp onto, like nothing spiritual, nothing like tangible to help me with my mental health. And I would just say I just was a very like zombie, like just depressed, like just come home, order Chinese food, watch reality television, and that was it, and go to sleep and like start all over again. And I just like, I didn't really give it much thought though. I could only like look back on that time in my life, like after having an awakening. And yeah, I mean, when I lost my parents, and I know I've like shared with you guys like how I've lost my parents, and just for the listeners, like I lost my parents to a murder-suicide. So it was very traumatic for me in the way that I was completely codependent. I learned what that term meant later in life, but when I went to therapy, I learned about that, because finally I was at my breaking point where I was like, okay, like I need something, because I don't know what is even the point of like being here anymore. And I was codependent. I spent every day with my family. I designed my whole life around them. As I look back, I didn't choose not to go to high school or not to go to college or not to move, because that wasn't me. I didn't know who I was. So I just look back on that time and I'm like, okay, I just designed my life around my parents to keep them happy and even keeled. And that's why I was doing it. I don't know where my life would have went if I had an earlier start or whatever. And I'm not really concerned about it. I just, in that moment, it was just very like, I had this, like, I spent every single day with these people, and they were the whole lights of my world. They were like my whole point of existence. And then that was ripped away from me. And I had, in an instant, you know what I mean? Like, I saw my mom like that day, like I saw my dad like that night. Like my dad came over to my house after he had, murdered my mother, and he came to my home and like, told me he was going on vacation. And then all of a sudden, like 2 hours later, I get a phone call that like from my cousin, because my dad had called his brother before and explained to him like what he had done and what he was about to do. And it was like, and even then, like my body like knew what was happening, but like my mind couldn't like catch up with it. And then it was just like, bam, like, 2 hours later, not even, it all runs together, but I'm getting a phone call from my cousin that's just like, You know, when my dad walked out the door, I immediately started calling my mom because I just like knew something was wrong. Like I just knew it. And I was just like calling and she wasn't answering. And I was home alone with Charlie and Charlie was asleep and I couldn't go anywhere. And I get this phone call from my cousin and she's like, yeah, like this happened. And I mean, I was just like, I couldn't believe it. It was just like, and that takes a lot to recover from, because now for the rest of my life, you know, it's like every time my daughter goes to school, like I worry, you know what I mean? Because it's just like, for me, my reality has been that two people that you could love and trust so much is just all of a sudden, like, they disappear off the face of the planet. And like, that was definitely, for a long time, I didn't want to talk about that. But at the same time, it is a huge, chapter in my life that has definitely shaped me, my path, my spirituality, and how I choose to move through my life how I choose to move through the world for the rest of my life. And it is, it's not everything, but it is like that huge monumental moment of like, wow, like I was so abused and fucked up for such a long time, and my brain didn't even have a chance. Like my brain has been conditioned for the first 28 years of my life, and I didn't even think about it, you know? And it's like, so that is like, yeah, absolutely. Mental health is like everything. And I feel really grounded and blessed that I'm just like, I don't try to beat myself up about it. Sometimes even in therapy, I'll like play the victim and I'll be like, there are so many other people that like don't get this opportunity to like rewire their brain. And I feel bad about it. I don't know why, you know, but all I can do is like take what's in front of me and what the universe is presenting to me. And yeah, I feel very fucking blessed that I like get to rewire my brain from the moment that happened till the rest of my life. And it has become a very beautiful, like, creative outlet for me to, like, literally, like, take my brain out and be like, okay, I'm going to rewire it. And yeah, and it's everything. Like, mental health is everything for me, like, as far as how I get to live out the rest of my world. And then that's where, like, spirituality comes in, because it's like, yeah, your brain is one thing and I get to condition it, but, like, now I get to reach even further beyond my brain and like connect with something that I was literally ripped away from me from the day that I was born. Like that connection with my intuition, with my higher self, it was literally killed off long before. And I didn't see that until looking back. But like, yeah, that happens a lot. I think that's been happening to people for centuries and centuries. It's like, let's rip you away from this, and then you don't question anything. Like, it literally took me going to therapy to even like realize that my dad was maybe not a nice guy. Like, that was just, it just never even dawned on me. It also didn't dawn on me that I had an interesting upbringing. Like, I thought that my upbringing was totally normal. Yeah. Like, I thought that I noticed certain things, like when I would go to other kids' house, because, like, to make a long story short, my dad was a sociopath. These are all, like, armchair diagnosis. Not really, but, like, talking to my therapist, like, I've had a therapist tell me, like, okay, this is what it seems like your dad was. Like, he was a sociopath. He was a narcissist, he was a germaphobe, and he was OCD. So, like, there was a lot of layers, like, going on, and how I grew up was definitely very unique and difficult and hard. And it's like, I would go over to other people's houses for, like, a birthday party, and just getting a drink out of the fridge was like carefree, you know, at their house. And that's when I would start to notice. I'd be like, oh, okay, like I have to wash my hands like 10 times. And then at the end of the day, even after I wash my hands 10 times, like usually my mom or dad still has to get me the drink because I like have germs on my hands and I can't like go into the fridge. And like, I just would notice certain things like that it wasn't normal. But it really took me going to therapy where like my therapist was like, wow, like, Miranda, like, how are you so normal? And I was like, I didn't know. I thought that everybody's parents were fucked up and like whatever. And I think that they are. And even like my own kid, even my own kid isn't going to come out unscathed, you know, but it's like, yeah, it's just, I thought that was normal. And it's like, it's pretty incredible. And even my mom, you know, she met my dad when she was 16 years old. So she also just didn't have a chance. I mean, her brain was being conditioned from a young age, and it's incredible like what we can condition our minds to think is normal, how we can take certain traumatic events in our lives and make them normal, how we can survive. And I get it, because it's survival, you know, and then recovering from it is just a whole nother thing as far as mental health goes.
I just want to reflect to you that you're a miracle.
Aw,
I was thinking about this because, you know, as someone who's been through a trauma myself, like I know how easy it is for people to get caught in like a loop, and to see you not only surviving but thriving is truly remarkable, and it's just amazing, and I think it gives a lot of people hope. So thank you so much for being vulnerable enough to share your story in a triumphant way, like you're victorious. And I also just want to reflect that I was seeing sparkles behind you as you were telling your story, so that tells me that there are people with you, or spirits with you, or like rooting for you, and it's just amazing.
Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate that. I definitely have very powerful spirit guides now. It's I definitely think both my parents are with me always, my grandma's with me always, and it's a nice little team I have working for me.
That's kind of the vibe I was getting.
Sure.
That it was them. And
No, and thank you for summing that up, because I always go off on tangents and I can't always sum it up. But that is bottom line, is what it is. Is like, I definitely thought in that moment that I always would journal and look back at my journals and be like, I don't know what happiness is, or what is that? Like, I don't know what that is. I've never experienced that before. And then definitely after losing my parents, I was like, well, fuck me. Like, I'm never going to be happy. Like, what am I even doing here? But that's not true. I'm actually the happiest I've ever been. And like, the grief is a weird thing. It's like, it never goes away, and you're always it's just something that you never recover from. Like, you're forever gonna be sad. But like, I have, through that most tragic experience of my life, like actually have experienced joy now, and through my spiritual path. And like, that is just such a blessing. And I'm just blessed. And like, I don't choose to live in it. It was like literally the best thing that happened to me, which I think, like, as spiritual people, we get that. I think sometimes when you say that to somebody, they're just like, how could you say that? But I literally wouldn't change it. Like, I hate that my mom had to die that way, and like, that's a hard thing for me to go to bed with every night, but like, I wouldn't change it. And ultimately they're where they need to be, because they were just in a complete toxic loop of conditioning as well, and they couldn't step out of it. So it's like, they were never going to get that work done, and now they're somewhere where they can. And that's also what I learned through being hypnotized with Lynette, is I feel like my dad is finally, for the first time, his energy, whatever it is, he, she, whatever, it is making progress, like where they are now.
And I feel like they're doing it through you too, and we've talked about this in the past on the podcast, and a lot of people are talking about it now with Saturn on the South Node in Capricorn, is we're healing the family lineage. And I feel like your ancestors and your direct descendants, or ascendants, I guess, your parents, you know, they're changing through you, and by you taking this victorious, healing, empowering path, you're definitely doing the work for them, and I'm sure that they're rooting for you.
They are. And you inspire me too. And can I share the one thing about your mom and her connection with Coven?
Oh yeah.
So in the session, it came out that her mom told her that she shines through the sunlight in the windows at Coven. And I thought that was so beautiful, that, you know, her energy is there, and how when we are not in physical form, how we can just join in with other aspects of the universe. So for her to be in that energy in the sunlight, I mean, how poetic, how beautiful. So it's no wonder that Coven is magnetic and beautiful, and people love being there.
Oh, that sunlight comes through.
It does.
It comes through those back windows. It's like this shower of constant sun rays. And
and now it's so funny, because people take pictures of it and post it on Instagram all the time by the way that the sunlight comes in. And now every time I see someone like tag me in a photo with that, I'm just like, oh, there she is, there's my mom, you know, like,
and she's beautiful.
Yeah, she really is. She really is beautiful.
So I guess we should start wrapping up the podcast here. So do you have any advice that you would give to younger people who are starting to awaken to their magical abilities and also to other entrepreneurs?
Yeah, I think that like my biggest thing is just like we're all gonna die, like that's inevitable. Like people don't want to talk about that, but it's just the truth.
Scorpio mic drop.
Right.
And
as
like
we approach the Day of the Dead and all of that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like, yeah, exactly. Like people maybe talk about it in that way, but it's like no, like you're really gonna die. Like and you don't know when. Like my parents were both healthy individuals. Like they died very young. You don't know when that's gonna be. And it's like, yeah, you may as well, take risk. And they're not really risk. Like me and Steph were talking about this the other day. I was like, I love surrounding myself with like dreamers and big thinkers, because it's just like really at the end of the day, because of you're going to die, like nothing really matters. Like you can't really fuck anything up. Like you can't, like you're just trying different shit until you die. It's the same thing of like trying different food or trying different clothes. Like your career path and the way that you live your life, it's a lot like that. But people overthink it, and there's a lot of like shame involved, I think, with like our career paths and how much money we make and all of this stuff. And like you don't need to overthink it. I mean, everything from this point forward, like I said, I don't really think very much. Like I just like do. And when I have a hunch, like I just go with it. And I just like one moment at a time, like when the universe puts something in front of me, I just go. And it's like if we spent all of our time just like thinking about everything that was going on in our brains, like we would never do anything. And that's oftentimes what I see is people that just they end up just not, they don't make that move to that state, or they don't try that different job, or they don't take that class. And it's like, but why? Like, and it seems simple and cliche, and it is. It's really that simple. Like, it's okay. Like, just try. Like, just do. You have one life. You're going to die. Like, you may as well just try a bunch of different shit. And that's just all I want people to know.
Solid
Famous
advice.
last words. We're all gonna die, so just do shit.
Pretty much.
I like it.
And you'll be the happiest you've ever been.
It's true.
Well, this has been good.
This has been so good.
Did we have any other questions we wanted to ask Miranda?
Can I ask one question?
Sure.
We
Please.
did ask all of us this question. We did our interviews, and I feel like in honor of the podcast, which dark goddess do you identify with most?
Yeah, so that question, like the dark goddess, like I'm not really sure, but I always grew up identifying with Artemis. Like I don't know if she's considered a dark
Sure.
goddess,
Yeah.
but I kind of think of her because she's like the goddess of the forest and the moon, and like that just seems like
Oh yeah,
Definitely.
the moon only
dark
comes
and,
out
like-
in the dark. For
Yeah.
the
Definitely in
most part.
tune with her wild side. For
yeah,
sure.
yeah. And I always liked Athena as well. I think she's the goddess of war. I think
Mm-hmm.
I always grew up really loving her and all of that. I've just always loved that. Like I have Joan of Arc like tattooed on me too. Like Joan of Arc isn't a goddess, but she kind of is. And
Oh yeah, she's a saint.
Yeah.
she's up there. She's
And she-
exalted.
And she
Yeah.
had magical abilities. She could hear. She
yeah.
had clairaudience.
yeah. I always like grew up thinking that women who just like, especially during that time, were just like so fucking powerful and like they were just doing shit, and
Yeah.
they were just they just like did their thing, and like, and it had a heavy price to pay for it. So it's like, yeah, wow, like that's really incredible. And so
Yeah.
I channel like really powerful women like that a lot, and I think Athena like is like that. Like she's just powerful, and
Yeah.
She's a good one to have on your side.
You do.
Yeah.
You channel powerful women. You are a powerful
Aw,
woman.
thank you
You
so
love
much.
powerful women.
I do.
Yeah.
it's all like I literally, if I could just connect with that for the rest of my life, I'd be happy. I don't just really powerful, open-minded, big dreams. Like I just love that.
You're already doing it. We were saying before we started the podcast recording how wonderful it is that Miranda has created kind of a hub for a lot of us creatives and magical people to kind of like move in and out of. You know, you'll find a lot of us convening at Coven, and it's just kind of nice to have like a home base, so to speak. So
Well, that's what I love about each and every one of you is that you're so authentic too. like you're so grounded in like who you are, you know, and it's really, I just admire it a lot, and I'm just honored that you all work at Coven. And
group
virtual group hug.
I do. I'm so grateful.
love
And
you
thanks for having me on the podcast and allowing me. I don't know if I brought value. It's
Oh,
something I'm concerned
yeah.
with.
Of course.
But I hope I did.
You brought
Of course
value,
you did.
wisdom.
Fixed
Go shop
signs
at
are
Coven.
all about
Yeah.
the value.
Come visit us at Coven.
Yeah,
We're
yeah.
there. Miranda's there.
Yeah, Catherine will be there next week doing
Yeah.
the first part of her 3-part series.
Yeah, our planetary mini series
Ooh.
for
Yes.
astrology classes.
Yes.
Very excited.
It's so exciting. And you bring so much value.
Aw,
And you just
thank
really
you.
like do your thing. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep.
If you
So-
guys out there have not been to Coven, go check it out. It's, as she mentioned, it's an art. It's an artwork. It's an art piece. Just all of it. It's really beautiful. It feels good when you go in.
Yeah.
So check it out.
There's
Thank
people
you so
always
much.
chilling, having good conversation. The books are on point also.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And the displays.
Yeah.
The crystals and delicious oils.
We could
So-
go on and on.
We could. Do you want to tell us where we can find you, like on Instagram, your website, and anything coming up? You know, this is kind of the season for Coven. So if you
Yeah.
have any events or anything going on at the shop in October that you want us to know about, please tell us.
Yeah, sure. So, you can find me on Instagram. It's at Coven CLE. That's also the same for Twitter and Tumblr, and I have a couple other platforms out there. But yeah, so you can find me there. My shop's located in Lakewood, Ohio. Like I said, if you're local, it's on Bonnie View in Lakewood. I'm open 6 days a week. The only day I'm closed is on Mondays. You can shop online at covencle.com. So there's that. And then, yeah, like I said, we have Catherine's class happening next Wednesday. We have Drag Queen Tarot happening on Friday. We have an artist coming in on Saturday that's going to be doing portraits. And then on the 14th of October, we have an event. It's like a fundraising event for NARAL Pro-Choice Ohio and Action Lakewood. And the little theme is claim your power, like cast your vote. So it's going to be a day of like voter registration, some educational things. It's not to sway anyone. It's just like, this is what's going on.
Yeah.
This is like what's up to be like voted on, all of that. And then some of the proceeds go back to NARAL Pro-Choice Ohio. And we'll also be doing yoga and meditation that day. And it's all just like free. So you can come in and do a free yoga class. You can come in and do a free guided meditation. And just hang out, eat snacks, drink, get educated a little bit. And and I like to do those events because that's also out of my wheelhouse. And it's like I love to like manifest and send energy, and it's like, but how can I empower people beyond that? It's like, yes, I can like meditate for the collective, but I also need to make sure that action wise I'm out there like doing what I need to do, voting when I need to vote, and those sorts of things. So it's an event all about like empowering yourself beyond and taking action beyond like maybe carrying a crystal or sending out an intention.
Yeah.
So I like to do things like that at Coven as well. So that's on the 14th.
Thank you so
Yeah.
much for sharing all the lovely things that you're facilitating for everyone in the Cleveland community and beyond. Can't wait to be a part, continue to be a part. And yeah, thank you so much for being here today.
Yeah.
Miranda.
Thank you all so much.
Miranda Scott. Thank you.
Give it up. All right. Bye, y'all.
Bye. Peace.
See ya.